Sibling rivalry. When we picture a Triceratops, we usually imagine epic cinematic showdowns against Tyrannosaurus rex. But one of the most famous fossils ever unearthed proves that their most lethal enemy was often looking right back at them in the mirror. Enter Big John, a massive Triceratops specimen, discovered with a gaping, brutal hole punched clean through his bony frill. Forensic analysis of the bone revealed signs of healing, proving he actually survived the initial impact. Paleontologists believe that during a violent territorial clash between two rival males, one of his opponent's massive 3-foot brow horns pierced his frill like a hot knife through butter. The impact zone was packed with critical nerves and major blood vessels, making every single head movement a living hell. While his exact cause of death remains a mystery, the leading theory is that a nasty bone infection set in, triggering a slow, agonizing end. Dueling dinosaurs. This story features two prehistoric brawlers so incredibly stubborn that not even being buried alive by a collapsing sand dune could stop their fight. In one corner, we have Protoceratops, a sheep-sized cousin of Triceratops rocking a parrot-like beak powerful enough to snap a human hand clean off. In the other, Velociraptor, a turkey-sized, hyper-aggressive predator armed with a razor-sharp 6-inch sickle claw. The result of their clash is one of the most dynamic fossils ever found, the exact frozen moment of a double KO deathmatch. Protoceratops is clamped down so hard on the raptor's arm that it likely shattered the bone, or nearly sheared it off entirely. Meanwhile, the Velociraptor is driving its killing claw directly into the herbivore's throat. It is a rare, smoking gun record of active predation in the fossil record. And it raises a wild question. The raptor was vastly smaller than its target. Was this a desperate, starving gamble, or is it evidence of a pack hunt that went catastrophically sideways? Either way, this fossil is proof that both of these animals had that absolute dog in them. The fisherman got fished. You've definitely heard the saying, the tables have turned. Well, there is a 150-million-year-old fossil that proves this concept with literal, hilarious brutality. Pterosaurs were the undisputed rulers of the Mesozoic skies. Not dinosaurs, but a highly successful branch of flying reptiles that took off in the Triassic. They came in all shapes and sizes. Insect hunters smaller than your arm, giraffe-sized giants like Quetzalcoatlus, and a massive cohort of skim feeders that hunted by slicing their beaks through the water. That is exactly what one unlucky Rhamphorhynchus was doing. This pterosaur was a precision-engineered fisherman, packing forward-facing, needle-like teeth designed to snag slippery fish. But this particular fishing trip ended in a total disaster. The fossil captures the exact moment the pterosaur dove, was blindsided from below by Aspidorhynchus, a primitive, long-snouted predatory fish. The fish drove its spear-like beak straight through the pterosaur's wing membrane, drag anchoring both of them to the bottom of the lake. The most ridiculous part? The fish was way too small to actually eat the pterosaur. This wasn't even a real predation attempt. The fish just saw movement. Its primitive brainstem triggered a strike instinct, and that split-second bad decision became a permanent monument to evolutionary stupidity. Lethal infection. Not every prehistoric animal died a comical death. Some lived lives so utterly metal that it's a miracle they survived as long as they did. Case in point, the T-Rex. We all know they were terrifying, but the fossil record proves they were practically indestructible. Take Sue, one of the largest and most complete T-Rex specimens ever discovered. Her bones read like a high-intensity trauma ward chart preserved in stone. Multiple broken ribs, a fibula so ravaged by a bone infection that it swelled to twice its normal size, and mysterious parasitic holes punched through her lower jaw. Despite carrying a laundry list of injuries that would have put any modern predator in the ground, Sue shrugged it off, lived for decades, and survived long enough to develop severe arthritis in her spine. Sue didn't just walk off injuries that would kill a normal animal. She actually lived long enough to grow old. Impaled alive. Being an apex predator doesn't make you untouchable, especially in the Jurassic, the age of Allosaurus. Measuring 30 feet long and weighing over 2 tons, this was the undisputed king of its domain. Yet every single time an Allosaurus went out to hunt, it was actively gambling with its life. Its world was one of the rare ecosystems in history where the prey was significantly more lethal than the predators. Diplodocus carried a 40-foot whip-like tail, capable of cracking the sound barrier and shattering bone on impact. And then there was Stegosaurus, armed with the Thagomizer, 4 sword-sized, solid-bone spikes on the end of its tail. We know Allosaurus learned this lesson the hard way because we have a fossil of one that picked a fight with the Stegosaurus and lost catastrophically. A defensive tail swipe drove a Thagomizer spike directly into the carnivore's pelvis, shattering the bone and introducing a lethal infection. We've also found a fossilized Stegosaurus neck plate bearing a massive crescent-shaped bite mark that perfectly matches the jaw profile of an Allosaurus. First hit and run. Not everything in the fossil record is a high-octane clash of titans. Sometimes it's just a massive footstep. Fossilized trackways are like prehistoric photographs, the exact millisecond a dinosaur's foot made contact with wet mud. Some capture herds migrating, others show predators stalking. But sometimes trackways don't just record a step, they record the victim trapped beneath it. In the late Jurassic of what is now Switzerland, a dwarf sauropod was heavy-stepping its way across a muddy floodplain, leaving deep, water-filled potholes in its wake. Right in its path sat a prehistoric turtle that chose the absolute worst place on Earth to take a nap. The result? A perfectly pancaked, fossilized turtle trapped inside the dinosaur's footprint for 150 million years. It stands as the oldest confirmed hit-and-run in geological history and easily one of the most humiliating ways to go fossilized. Killed by a tree. If there were an award for the most catastrophically unlucky dinosaur in history, this Parasaurolophus would easily take home the trophy. Its skeleton was discovered, bearing an absolute checklist of traumatic injuries: a fractured pelvis, shattered ribs, a busted jaw, and most importantly, a severely crushed neck vertebra. Paleontologists analyzing the damage concluded that this neck-breaking blow was likely caused by a massive falling tree, an incredibly freak million-to-one accident. The bones show clear, extensive signs of healing, meaning this multi-ton herbivore survived the impact. He spent his remaining months walking, foraging, and dodging tyrannosaurs. Scientists also found evidence of a massive jaw infection that likely delivered the final blow. Sometimes, the deadliest thing in the Cretaceous wasn't a pack of raptors, it was a bad case of rotten luck. Choked by the catch. To close things out, let's look at an ichthyosaur that was literally killed by its own dinner. Ichthyosaurs were dolphin-like marine reptiles that dominated the global oceans for over 150 million years. This particular specimen lived during the Triassic. Now, when people think of the Triassic seas, they usually think of the big three: ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs. But the Triassic oceans were a chaotic evolutionary sandbox. You had nothosaurs, the seals of the era, placodons, bizarre armored clam-crushing reptiles, and thalatosaurs, long, slender coastal reptiles that could reach up to 13 feet. Usually, the massive ichthyosaurs sat comfortably at the top of the food chain, swallowing small prey without a second thought. But this fossil shows a 15-foot ichthyosaur that attempted to swallow a 13-foot thalatosaur completely whole in a single bite. Attempting to down a victim almost your own size is a spectacular design flaw. The massive reptile choked on its catch, suffocating both of them instantly.